She just passed away. The stunned look on David's face as he stared at me standing in the doorway was forever etched in my mind. He seemed unable to grasp the sudden news of our daughter's death. What are you talking about? Stop with the cruel pranks. That's a terrible joke. David mocked me as I stood there soaked from the rain. It's not a lie. How could you let this happen? I'll handle the funeral arrangements, so please stay away from the house for a while. Goodbye. Seeing me trembling from head to toe, David finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation, leaning back in shock and muttering, "Is this for real?" But his reaction seemed so distant, so detached, it grated on my nerves. I turned on my heel, rage burning inside me. I'll never forgive him. I'll make sure he pays, even if I have to drag him to hell myself. My name is Juliana Bridges. I'm 38 years old and work at an advertising agency. Our family consists of my husband David and our 8-year-old daughter Mia. We aren't rich, but we lead a comfortable life thanks to my well-paying job at the agency. I earn a hefty salary, so I've never had to worry about spending money each month. We've even been able to save up for Maya's college tuition. Considering the cost of living and our home mortgage, we've always had some extra money left over. David was well aware of my high salary, and perhaps his pride was hurt because a year ago, he quit his job and started freelancing in web design. He said he switched to freelancing because his salary job had hit its pay ceiling, but I was skeptical about how much one could really earn as a freelancer. Of course, I objected when he said he wanted to quit. I thought it would be safer to stay in his job, get his full retirement benefits, and then think about other options. But David was adamant about freelancing, so that's what he did. Ever since he began freelancing, David has been working from home. Maybe his stated reason for quitting his job was just a cover and he was really tired of the office politics. Either way, I had to get used to a new routine where David was always home when I left for work. At first, Maya seemed happy that her dad was always at home when she came back from school, but lately she seemed somewhat discontented. She probably feels like she's being constantly watched. She's only 8, but Maya is more mature than her classmates. So our life was going along without any major issues, but I didn't notice that the cracks started appearing when David began working from home. When David started working from home, I asked him if he could help a little with the household chores. Can you help with things like cleaning and laundry? I'll still cook the meals. I always have excuses. Why do I have to do housework? You're home more and you have more free time. It would be nice if you could help out a bit when you're not too tired. Free? Just because I'm a freelancer doesn't mean I'm not busy. In fact, I've got a lot on my plate. I can't deal with household stuff on top of that. David brushed aside my modest requests. I understand that freelancing can be more unstable and mentally taxing compared to a regular salary job. That's one reason why I didn't want him to switch in the first place. But household chores are nobody's specific job, and I've been doing them all alone even though we've both been working. I thought he could share some of the load. But I work too, you know. It should be equal. You've managed everything by yourself up until now. Don't start complaining now. David, convinced he was in the right, wouldn't listen to me at all. In the end, I continued to handle all the household chores as usual. I don't assume he's not busy just because he works from home, but whenever I return home late at night, I'd invariably find David sprawled in front of the TV or deeply engrossed in his smartphone. Is dinner ready? He'd ask with an air of entitlement, which always infuriated me. What's more, since working from home, he seemed to become more concerned about cleanliness, always demanding that I clean the house more thoroughly, pointing out every little piece of dirt on the floor, the windows in the bathroom. If you're so concerned, why don't you clean it up yourself? I'm only human. I can't get to everything, I'd reply. Are you talking back to me? Clean up your own mess. It's our family's home. It's not like I'm the only one making it dirty. Yet David would go off on these bizarre tangents, and I was utterly baffled by his logic. Maya would quietly listen to our exchanges from a distance. You know, Dad's always glued to his phone, she'd say. I wish we could go out together on weekends, but Daddy's always busy on his phone, Maya said one Sunday morning as I was preparing breakfast. Apparently, Maya had asked David to go out and play the previous evening, but he'd refuse, barely looking up from his phone. That's true, he's always on that phone, I acknowledged. He's been like that since before you come home from work. Sometimes he's on calls too. Calls? Yeah, he always sounds friendly and I can hear a woman's voice. From Maya's account, it didn't seem like David was talking to a client or a colleague. I tried to think of who he could be talking to so frequently. As a freelancer, I was unfamiliar with the world of freelancing, so I didn't know, but the mention of a woman's voice definitely bothered me. Could he be having an affair? It wasn't unthinkable. He had started working from home only a few months ago, and he now had more free time than when he had a regular job. Trying not to let Maya see my agitation, I focused on preparing breakfast. Several months passed since David started freelancing. He still never helped with any of the household chores, and he began spending whole days away from home during the weekends. I have work to do. Freelancers don't get days off, he'd say as he left the house, dressed sharper than usual, even wearing cologne and accessories he didn't normally use. I had my suspicions, but with no evidence, confronting him would be pointless. Besides, even if David was cheating, I was torn about what I should do. I knew it would be better to part ways. But thinking of Mia, it wasn't an easy decision. Every day, I agonized over the potential consequences for Mia of taking her father away from her. Our lives continued in this way, but a turning point was soon to come. One Monday morning, as I was preparing for work, Mia didn't get up as usual, and I was getting anxious that she'd be late for school. "Mia, it's morning. You need to get up, or you'll be late for school." When I went to Mia's room to wake her up, she looked completely drained. I rushed to her side and placed my hand on her forehead. "You're burning up, Mia." "Yeah," she murmured weakly. I got a thermometer and took her temperature. It read 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Panic set in as I realized I couldn't take the day off today. I had an important meeting. While I was panicking, David entered the room. "What happened?" "Maya is running a high fever. I can't take the day off from work today. Maybe we should call a babysitter." "A babysitter? I'll take care of her." "What?" "Just let her rest. I can make her some soup. It'll be fine." I was utterly taken aback by David's sudden willingness to take care of Mia. David, who had never lifted a finger to help with household chores or child rearing, was now offering to care for our daughter when she was sick. Unbelievable. Though I found it hard to believe, I decided to trust him given the urgency of the situation. "All right, thank you. There's some fruit in the fridge. Give her some if she feels like eating." "Got it." Relieved by David's reassuring response, I hurriedly got ready and left the house. I was deeply concerned about Mia, but arriving at work on time was my top priority for the moment. By the time I reached my office in New York, the skies had darkened and it had started raining. Fortunately, I had a foldable umbrella with me, so I reached the office without getting wet. The meeting began in the afternoon as scheduled, but I couldn't stop thinking about Mia. The office was abuzz due to the sound of heavy rain and strong winds from outside. Come to think of it, wasn't there news about a hurricane approaching? I'd been so busy lately that I hadn't been keeping up with the weather updates, but I remembered a warning about a hurricane making landfall tonight. During the meeting, all of my colleagues, including myself, were constantly distracted by the storm outside, frequently glancing out the windows. By 7:00 p.m., when I was finally done with work and heading home, the earlier storm had turned into a torrential downpour, causing several train delays. The train I was supposed to catch was also delayed, and the platform was packed with people. I was really worried about Mia, who was running a high fever and couldn't bear the thought of waiting there. I hurriedly left the station and began looking for a taxi. There were many others waiting for taxis too, so it took quite a while, but after about 30 minutes, I finally managed to hail one. After a 30-minute ride, I arrived home but was speechless at the sight that greeted me. To my horror, Maya was lying unconscious in front of our entrance. I quickly scooped her up. "Mia, are you okay? What happened?" Seeing me might have comforted her because after she whispered, "Daddy," she just slumped, looking exhausted. Despite being drenched in rain, her body was burning up. I turned to the taxi I had just gotten out of and knocked on the window. "I'm sorry. I need you again. Please take us to the nearest hospital." Seeing Maya's condition and my desperation, the driver quickly opened the door, understanding the gravity of the situation. I quickly hopped back into the taxi. "I need to get to the nearest hospital, fast." Mia, I kept calling out to her throughout the ride. I felt that if I didn't, something terrible might happen to her. I desperately wanted to know why she was outside in the first place, especially during a storm. But right now, saving her was more important. Despite the heavy rain and slow-moving traffic, we finally reached the hospital. "Ma'am, do take care, especially if you're heading back in this storm," the kind taxi driver said as he dropped us off. "Thank you so much. With a kind-hearted driver seeing me off, I rushed Mia into the hospital. Even though the hospital was busy with many patients, the receptionist quickly realized the urgency upon seeing Mia's condition and got her immediate attention. 30 minutes later, a doctor finally examined Mia, informing me that she was semi-conscious due to a high fever. Thankfully, she had no physical injuries. If her fever reduced, she should be okay. However, given that she'd apparently been outside in the rain for hours with that fever, she had to be admitted immediately. "Mia, I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better soon," I whispered. "Ma'am," a nurse said, "we'll take good care of her. You should rest today." "Thank you." After spending 5 hours at the hospital, endlessly staring at Mia's pained face as she slept, a nurse finally approached me. Though I wanted to stay by Mia's side, I was exhausted both physically and mentally. Having worked all day and then seeing Mia in this state had left me spent, I decided it was best to let the nurses handle it and head home. Everything that happened to Mia was undoubtedly David's fault. Mia murmuring "Daddy" before passing out was evidence enough. It was inconceivable that Mia, with such a high fever, would willingly go outside, especially not during a storm. The more I thought about what David had done, the angrier I became, unable to comprehend or forgive him. All the way home, I pondered what to say to him. If he hears that Mia is okay, he might think it's alright to continue with his reckless behavior in the future. I absolutely don't want that to happen. I needed him to deeply reflect on his actions even more than feeling remorse. With a certain resolve, I headed home. When I arrived, wet from the rain, David was casually fiddling with his smartphone. Noticing me, he looked up in surprise. "Hey, where's Mia? Wasn't she sleeping at the entrance? She said she wanted to play outside. I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen." Seeing David ask that with such nonchalance made my anger boil over. Mia went out on her own? He's the one who tossed her out in the first place. I clenched my fists tightly and replied, "She just passed away." "What?" David stared at me with a dumbfounded look as I stood in the doorway, drenched from the rain. The shock of hearing that his daughter had died seemed too much for him to grasp. "What are you talking about? Stop playing sick jokes. That's in bad taste." The nerve of him to mock me as I stood there, drenched from the rain. "It's not a lie. What have you done? I'll handle the funeral arrangements, so stay away from the house for a while. Goodbye." Seeing me shaking with rage, it finally hit David how serious the situation was, and he blurted out, "Are you for real?" But his reaction seemed so detached, as if it was happening to someone else, which irritated me even more. I turned on my heels, a fury inside me blazing. I won't ever forgive him. I'll drag him down to hell if I have to. I stormed out of the house and headed straight for a hotel. I managed to find a vacant room and decided to stay there for a while. Although it would cost me, now wasn't the time to worry about money. I want to get back at David. If he felt remorse and changed his ways after hearing about Mia's death, I might reconsider my approach. But seeing that he didn't call or message me that day, my resolve only grew stronger. It was clear he couldn't care less about what happened to Mia. This only fueled my anger further, and I began to devise a plan to make him pay. The next morning, I woke up and immediately headed to the hospital. I got word that Mia had regained consciousness. "Mia, are you okay?" "Mom, yeah, I'm fine now. My fever's gone down." "Oh, thank goodness." I hugged Mia tightly and gently stroked her head. She giggled as if tickled by the gesture. Relishing the joy of Mia's return, I eventually pressed her for the truth. "Ma, what happened yesterday?" "Daddy kicked me out." "I knew it. He said I was in the way and told me to leave. Then a woman came in, and they chatted like they were close." "A woman? What did she look like?" I didn't get a good look, but she was young. She had bright red nails and wore skinny heels. I couldn't believe it. David was having an affair. Not only did he bring his mistress home on a day Mia had a high fever, but he also locked his own daughter outside. It was beyond comprehension. How could he do something so horrible? "I'm sorry, Mia. That must have been terrifying." "Yeah, but I was happy you came to save me, Mom." For David to put Mia through such trauma and think he could be happy with his mistress was unforgivable. I felt a burning rage consuming me. "By the way, Daddy said he's going to invite that lady over again next Sunday." "Next Sunday? That's the day I'm supposed to go on the company trip." He was planning to spend a fun day with his mistress while I was away. I was appalled, but it strengthened my resolve. "Thanks for telling me." I patted Mia's back, vowing to get back at David. The following Sunday, I decided to take Mia and return home. I informed my company that due to personal reasons, I wouldn't be able to attend the trip. After Maya was discharged, we had been staying at the hotel together. It had been a while since we were home, but as we approached the front door, it felt like we were entering someone else's house. "We're home," I said, trying to sound normal. As Maya and I entered, we saw unfamiliar high heels at the entrance, just as Mia had described. The thought of David and his mistress enjoying themselves deeper in the house made my skin crawl. David wasn't in the living room, so I headed to the bedroom, worried about what Mia might witness. I hesitated for a moment, but the room was quiet. Listening closely, I could hear David's voice coming from the bedroom. "You know, it really worked out for me with Mia gone. It made breaking up easier." "How can you say such a thing about your own daughter?" the woman responded. "But yeah, for me it was kind of lucky," David replied. Hearing them talk about Mia's supposed death as if it were a good thing made my head spin. It was clear David didn't feel an ounce of remorse. If that's the case, it's time to confront him directly. "Excuse us," I said as Maya and I appeared in the doorway. The two of them were taken aback, their eyes wide with shock. "Why the hell are you here? You said you were on a company trip. And why is Maya here?" David stammered. "What do you mean? Wasn't Maya supposed to be dead?" the woman added, looking confused. I explained calmly, "The part about Mia being dead was a lie. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see your reaction. I hoped you might show some remorse, but instead, you're here celebrating Mia's supposed death. That's just insane." "A lie? Damn it, you played with my feelings," David said, his fake concern turning to frustration. "Don't mess with me. You're the one who kicked Mia out of the house, right?" I shot back. "No, I didn't. Maya just—" "Daddy did kick me out," Maya interrupted. "He said I was in the way because he wanted to be with that woman." With Mia's swift revelation, David's face turned pale. "That's right," I said. "You did the worst possible thing, not just as a father, but as a human being. Maya was in such a condition that it wouldn't have been surprising if she had died, and you prioritized being with that woman over her," I said, pointing at the woman who had been silently watching our confrontation. "Oh, calling her my mistress? That's not right. She's a colleague from work." "Work? Wait, didn't you say you quit your job and you're freelancing now?" I asked, catching David off guard. David hesitated, his hasty lie inadvertently confirming she was indeed his mistress. "Well, we don't really need to ask her now, do we? Here's the evidence of your affair." Private investigators are quite something. They gathered this much evidence in just a week. I thrust a large envelope towards David. "That's right. After hearing about David's affair from Mia, I decided to get a thorough investigation, but I never imagined the evidence would pile up so quickly. Seems like David isn't very good at hiding things." Hesitantly, David opened the envelope, and as he pulled out the photos, he dropped them, scattering the evidence of his affair all over the floor. "This is so unfair. Do you enjoy cornering someone like this and putting them in a situation where they can't escape?" David protested, trying to deflect blame onto me, which I couldn't understand at all. I pulled out the business card of a divorce lawyer I had stashed in my bag and thrust it towards David. "Unfair. Who's the real coward here? I see no worth in staying with someone so thoughtless any longer. Let's get a divorce." David's eyes widened as he stared at the business card. If he truly wanted to be with his mistress, he should have been willing to accept the divorce easily. "Oh, and by the way, once we're separated, you'll, of course, be responsible for asset division and child support. I'll make sure to inform your company and your parents about everything. Be prepared for that." I glanced at the woman, his affair partner, when I said, "You." "What? Why me? I didn't know anything about this." The woman protested. "Don't you know you destroyed a family with your actions? You have to take responsibility," I told her firmly. The mistress began to panic and messed up her hair. Both Maya and I watched her coldly. Mia, still a child, seemed to understand what was going on and held my hand tightly. "If you don't have the money, find a way to get it. You two are in love, right? You should be able to overcome this together. Just never show up in front of Maya and me again. I'll give you the house, but you're still responsible for the mortgage," I said sternly. "Wait," David tried to protest, but I pulled Mia away. Yes, Maya was going to lose her father, but I had no regrets. I wouldn't put Maya in harm's way ever again. "We'll do our best from now on, okay, Mia?" I asked her. "Yeah." Maya looked surprisingly happy, which put me at ease. I decided to go back to my childhood home with Maya and stay there for a while. My parents were livid with David for cheating and putting Maya through such pain to the point where they felt like giving David a piece of their mind. But I managed to calm them down and avoid further issues. "You can stay here as long as you need," my mom said, and my dad nodded in agreement. "Thank you both," I said gratefully. Maya was thrilled to see her beloved grandparents. For now, everything seemed all right. As for David, he got a lawyer and managed to settle the child support and asset division in one payment. I couldn't imagine David having millions saved up, so he probably took on some debt. With the remaining mortgage to pay off, David must be stretched pretty thin right now. A coworker from my company who went to high school with David updated me about him. Apparently, he ended up breaking up with his mistress. David had boasted to her about having money, so when the truth came out, they quickly parted ways. David's income was already halved from what he used to make as a salaried employee, so it's understandable. Now, in addition to his freelance work, he's scrambling with various part-time jobs. After losing his wife, daughter, and mistress, David will probably live a frugal life paying off his debts. He got what he deserved. I hope he learns from his hardships and regrets his actions. "Mommy, today at school, I made Grandparents' Day gifts for Grandma and Grandpa," Maya said excitedly. "Really? Let's get it to them later together, okay?" I replied, smiling at her. Seeing Maya so lively and happy, even without David around, made me feel content. From now on, I'm going to move forward at my own pace with Mia by my side.
My name is Kamla Hawkins, and I'm 28 years old. I got married to my colleague Daniel 2 years ago. Daniel is a bit older than me, and he told me he liked me first. It took some time, but eventually I got pregnant after we got married. The baby is due later this year. Now that my morning sickness has gone away and I feel better during my pregnancy, I'm starting to get everything ready for the baby. I lost my parents when I was young, so my husband's parents have been a big support to us. They're really excited to become grandparents for the first time. They live in a countryside area, so we don't see them often. They always remind me to take good care of myself and eat well to have a healthy baby. They send us fresh vegetables and fruits they grow themselves. Lately, I've noticed I've gained a bit of weight, maybe because I've been enjoying all those fresh veggies and fruits so much. I have an older sister named Sophia Baker, who is 32 years old. She's married and has a sweet 3-year-old daughter named Maya. Sophia's husband, David, adores Maya and often jokes, "I won't let anyone marry her. If they ask, I'll scare them off." Sophia just laughs and says, "Oh, stop it, you." Since I found out I was pregnant, Sophia has been incredibly supportive and helpful. She gives me lots of advice and acts like a great mentor. If you ever have any questions, just ask me, okay? I've been through this before, so I can help. She also gave us some baby stuff she doesn't need anymore, which will save us money. Whenever I have appointments with my gynecologist, Dr. Rodriguez, Sophia usually comes along with me. Dr. Rodriguez is very experienced and trustworthy. Once my husband Daniel joined us for a session. The doctor emphasized, "The most important thing is the health of the pregnant woman, right, Daniel?" Daniel nodded seriously, agreeing. "Absolutely. She shouldn't be doing heavy lifting or reaching for high things. It's okay for her to exercise moderately, but don't overdo it," the doctor advised. Daniel listened carefully and then reassured me, "Don't worry, I can handle the cooking and grocery shopping. I'm happy to help with cleaning and laundry too," I asked him directly. He smiled and agreed, "Of course. It's not much different from what I do now. I can take care of the heavy shopping, like drinks." It made me really happy to see him so supportive and involved. After we got married, I decided to quit my job, and now I work part-time at a local supermarket. My job involves being a cashier and restocking shelves. I work 3 days a week for about 3 to 4 hours each day, which isn't too taxing for me. There are many women at work who have kids, so they understand my situation and often give me advice. Lately, Daniel's job has become more demanding. I know what he does because we used to work at the same company. He's in an office job, so except during the busy financial reporting season, he shouldn't have too much overtime, I remind myself. They've started a new department, and I've been made team leader for a group of younger staff, he mentioned. I need to work hard now that we're expecting a baby. But I worry about him pushing himself too much. "Don't overdo it," I caution him, and he reassures me, "Don't worry, I take breaks when I need to." One day I received a call from my cousin Luke Cohen. "Hey Cam, I need some advice," he said. Luke, who is 2 years younger than me, got married to Alice last year. They've been together since high school. Alice is pregnant, and she's been having awful morning sickness. She can't stand the smell of food and hardly eats anything. "What should I do?" he asked. "Well, if she can't eat bread, let her eat cake, right? You sound like Marie Antoinette," I teased. But seriously, when I was pregnant, I just avoided foods that bothered me and ate what I could manage. Staying hydrated was important, and chewing mint gum or candy helped with the nausea, I advised. Got it, thanks. You always know what to say. I'll call you again if anything else comes up, Luke responded gratefully. Sophia, who is my elder in motherhood but younger in experience, lives nearby. Since she's self-employed, she has more flexibility with her time. We've had plenty of opportunities to hang out even before I got married. However, Daniel's behavior began to change as he started working more on weekends, claiming he needed to sort out paperwork from the week. We were spending less time together, and I could feel him becoming more distant. One night, I brought up my frustration about his frequent weekend work. Can't you manage your work better? You said you'd help around the house, but I feel like I'm doing everything, I complained. My belly was getting bigger, and even simple tasks like cutting my nails were becoming a challenge. But he brushed off my concerns and asked for more support, saying, "My work is really important right now. Can't you be more understanding?" I get that, but I'm struggling too. Look at my belly. I'm working hard for our child as well. Please don't just dump everything on me, I replied. Besides, what I heard, is it about seeing another man? Do you mean my cousin Luke? He helps me with shopping when you're not around, I clarified. Cousin, really? We've been meeting for a while now. He's part of my family, so naturally, we see each other, I explained. Anyway, please be patient with me a little longer. As the due date approached, tensions remained high. When labor started, I went to the hospital with Sophia. Dr. Rodriguez told me, "You're ready for the delivery room. After the birth, you'll stay for postnatal care." Daniel couldn't be there for the birth or help with hospital preparations due to work, so Sophia took care of everything. 5 hours after arriving at the hospital, I gave birth to a boy. Despite the pain, the midwife said it was a straightforward delivery. Seeing my baby's adorable face made everything feel worthwhile. That night, Daniel finally visited the hospital. Dr. Rodriguez warmly said, "Congratulations on your wife's hard work. Hold your baby and enjoy this moment." I was tired but excited to see Daniel's reaction. However, he didn't smile and remained silent after seeing the baby. Then he asked, "Is he really my child?" "What? That's your first thought?" I was shocked and speechless. Dr. Rodriguez reassured us, "Give it some time. You'll grow to love him." Gathering my thoughts, I turned to Daniel and said firmly, "This is our child. Let's work together to raise him." Despite my plea, Daniel remained impassive. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Doctor, I have a request. Please conduct a DNA test for the child." What? I was stunned by his request. A DNA test? Did he seriously doubt that this was his child? It felt absurd and deeply hurtful. Dr. Rodriguez was taken aback. "Well, it's possible to do that, but these aren't the kind of words you should be saying on the day of the birth," she tried to reason with him. Daniel insisted, "Please, I need it." Feeling wounded, I couldn't hold back. "Do you doubt me? This is devastating," I cried out. The pain of childbirth suddenly seemed trivial. "I just want the truth. If the test shows he's really our son, that's all that matters. It would bring me peace of mind, or is there some reason you're worried about?" Was he implying I had something to hide? It was a terrible accusation. I don't expect you to thank me, but asking for a DNA test right now is beyond hurtful. As tensions escalated, Dr. Rodriguez reluctantly agreed. "All right, we'll proceed with the test." Feeling disheartened, I knew deep down that the child was Daniel's, so I braced myself for what was to come. After Daniel left the room, tears streamed down my face. I had hoped for his happiness, but instead he had doubted me so deeply that he insisted on a DNA test. Following Daniel's request, we conducted the DNA test and arranged to receive the results over the weekend. When he returned to the hospital on the day of the report, Daniel appeared unusually composed. Dr. Rodriguez handed over the report. "Let's get straight to the point. The test results show that the probability of Daniel being the father of the boy is..." Dr. Rodriguez paused before delivering the devastating news, 0%. This child is not biologically related to Daniel. I was in utter shock, on the verge of collapse. But how is that possible? I struggled to comprehend any explanation. My mind went blank. Daniel smirked triumphantly. "Just as I suspected. You tried to pass off a child from an affair as mine." He pointed accusingly at me. "We're getting divorced. You're solely responsible. Get ready for significant alimony payments." After Daniel left the room, I was left in shock and disbelief. I turned to Sophia and Luke for advice. Sophia listened quietly, then spoke firmly. "This is a false accusation. We need to clear this up." Luke, strangely smirking, assured me, "Don't worry, everything's fine on my end." Sophia snapped back, "This is serious, not a joke." Luke chuckled, seeming amused. I couldn't tell if they were taking the situation seriously or enjoying my distress. Later, Daniel called me. I decided to file for divorce. My parents support me. As the victim here, I'll be seeking alimony, maybe around $30,000. I'm thinking of leaving it all to a lawyer. Is that okay? He continued coldly. Oh, and you'll cover the hospital bills yourself. I won't pay a cent for someone else's child. I replied sharply, do whatever you want. Fine, do as you wish. I feel like a stranger now. If you can't pay the alimony, I'll take the house and land. It's my right as the victim, Daniel remained defiant. Those properties were inherited from my deceased parents. I don't care. Anyway, I'm busy with the divorce preparations. I'll get in touch later. I shared this with Sophia and decided to focus on my next steps. Shortly after, I was discharged from the hospital, and Luke arrived to pick me up in his car. How are you holding up? Feeling tired? Luke asked gently. I'm feeling much better now, but I need to stay strong for this little one, I replied, glancing at my baby wrapped snugly in a blanket. That's right. I've got everything planned out. We'll make sure Daniel pays back double or even triple for what he's done, Luke assured me. As we talked, we pulled up to my house. Inside, everything looked different. Daniel had cleared out all his things, leaving the rooms nearly empty except for the baby items I'd prepared. There was a note from him. I'm leaving the house and won't be returning. Don't try to find me at my parents' place. I'll contact you only when necessary. Realizing he might have gone where he usually handles matters, I soon received a call from Daniel. His timing was impeccable. I answered, and he immediately shouted, "Why did you send that to my workplace?" "Well, since you didn't tell me where you were going, I had no choice but to send it to your office," I replied casually. "You've made a mess. I had to explain everything to my boss, and now everyone at work is staring at me because of it." "It all went according to plan. That's not my concern," I retorted. "So you've seen the notice, right? Make sure you show up at the lawyer's office. Don't even think about avoiding this. Who said anything about running away? You better be ready. I'm going to fight this until the end." It seemed that the legal notice sent by my lawyer had reached Daniel's office. I could picture him feeling rattled. The plan to confront Daniel was slowly falling into place. Soon after, we gathered at the lawyer's office for the divorce proceedings. Daniel's parents were present as well. Sophia and her husband David, who works in construction and has always treated me like a sister, accompanied me. The meeting began. My wife cheated and had a child, trying to pass it off as mine and using my money. This is extremely deceitful, so I'm not only seeking alimony but also asking for the house and land in her name as compensation, Daniel asserted confidently. But I was prepared for anything. My lawyer began to explain. "I understand your concerns, however, in a divorce involving infidelity, property division is still governed by legal principles, and not all demands may be met. My role is to mediate based on the facts and ensure fairness," Daniel retorted. "Justice is clearly on my side here. Having a child with someone else and trying to pass it off as mine is essentially fraud. I might consider involving the police," his parents chimed in. "Camila, this is devastating. We were so happy about our first grandchild, only to find out it's not Daniel's. It's heartbreaking, especially for the child. Regardless of legal outcomes, please raise the child well and make amends," Daniel's parents added. "What you've done is unforgivable. I'm entirely innocent and the victim here. It all hinges on Camila reflecting on her actions and apologizing to me. Do you have any remorse or intention to apologize?" Daniel was convinced of his impending victory. Now is the perfect time. "No, Daniel, the one who needs to reflect and apologize is you," I responded calmly. Taken aback by my unexpected retort, Daniel stood up. "What are you talking about?" "I know everything. What if your affair partner found out? I might seek compensation from him too. I've invited someone here who knows about your actions," I continued teasingly. "Are you out of your mind? I'm the victim here." Daniel was now on the defensive. "I'm the victim here, so who are these witnesses?" I declared. "Thank you for waiting. Please come in," I beckoned, and two individuals entered the room. Daniel looked stunned. "And who are you?" I asked the first person. "I'm Dr. Rodriguez from the maternity clinic," the first person answered. "And you?" I turned to the second person. "Hi, I'm Luke Gowans, Camila's cousin," the second person replied. "You're Camila's affair partner. Did you have a child with your cousin?" Daniel demanded, his voice tinged with accusation. "Don't be disrespectful. My wife, Alice, is pregnant, and I've only ever sought advice from Camila as a friend," Luke clarified. "I've never seen her in any other way. Please don't make baseless accusations." "Luke, isn't that a bit harsh?" I interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. "I'll have to scold him later," Dr. Rodriguez interjected with a wry smile. "Sorry about that. Please let me explain," I urged her to continue. "Thank you. Let me make it clear. Based on the DNA test results, the baby is unquestionably the biological child of both Daniel and Camila," Dr. Rodriguez stated firmly. Daniel was visibly shocked and exclaimed, but the test showed the child wasn't mine. You must have paid off someone to falsify the results." My husband, who is the hospital's chairman, confronted the technician, and he confessed tearfully. "We have a recorded confession. Even I felt like confessing when faced with that husband," Dr. Rodriguez explained. Daniel clenched his jaw. "Kamala's sister brought a strand of your hair and requested a retest. Normally we wouldn't proceed with this, but after hearing her side, we agreed. The second test confirmed that the baby is indeed yours, and we have terminated the technician who assisted you. His actions compromised the integrity of our hospital," Dr. Rodriguez concluded. "Daniel, why would you do such a thing?" I confronted him, standing up. Sophia spoke up on behalf of the speechless Daniel. "It's because Daniel was the one cheating." Daniel's parents were left speechless, their initial shock apparent. Daniel was the cheater. "We saw him with another woman downtown on a Saturday," I revealed. "He claimed he was working that day, which seems suspicious to us." "We asked Luke to investigate," Sophia added. "Yeah, I used to work part-time at a detective agency in college, so I know how to dig into these things. We gathered plenty of evidence of his affair. Here's a recording of their conversation," Luke explained. Sophia played the recording on a digital recorder. Daniel and the woman's voices were clear. "We'll manipulate a DNA test to make it look like the child isn't mine. I'll use that as proof of her cheating with someone else, maybe her cousin. I have photos, and I'll accuse her of infidelity. Then I can blame everything on her, file for divorce, claim alimony, and since she had a child with another man, I'll take the house and land too. I'll be seen as the victim in all of this. There won't be any issue with us being together after that." Daniel looked stunned as the recording played, unable to speak. "I'm a genius, aren't I? More like a villain than a genius," came the woman's laughter on the recording. Sophia stopped the recorder and Luke added, "The woman is Leah Turner, your colleague from the same team." Daniel's face went pale at the conclusive evidence presented. He had no defense left. "Now that the truth is out, it's my turn," said the lawyer with a smirk. He produced various documents from an envelope and continued, "Here are Camila's demands. Firstly, she requests a divorce from Daniel. Regarding the forgery of the DNA test, she won't pursue legal action, but she will seek compensation from Daniel and Leah. Additionally, Daniel will be required to undergo property division and provide child support." Daniel's parents were stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Pressured by Kamala and Sophia, Daniel capitulated. I filled out the divorce paperwork and Daniel completed his portion. The finalized divorce form was witnessed by the lawyer and promptly filed. Leaving the lawyer's office, we celebrated at a nearby restaurant. I was officially divorced from Daniel. I received a substantial amount of compensation and child support in a lump sum. I named my son Landon, and it seemed his grandparents had advanced the funds. Daniel found himself ostracized from his family, burdened with debts he had to slowly repay. His affair with a colleague led to both of them being dismissed for violating company policies. Now struggling to find stable employment, Daniel worked part-time at a gas station. Meanwhile, I focused on raising Landon, taking a leave from work. The compensation money I received was sufficient for us to live on comfortably. Landon brought immense joy into my life, and capturing his moments on camera turned into a surprising source of income when Luke edited and uploaded our videos online, which gained popularity. I received tremendous support in raising Landon, not just from Sophia, but also from my colleagues at the part-time job, especially the older women who helped with grocery shopping and deliveries. The store manager, who often assisted with these deliveries, turned out to be a kind and hardworking man who had gone through a divorce himself. Unbeknownst to me, the ladies at work had been subtly trying to set us up. As Landon turned 1 year old, the store manager proposed to me. I admired his humble demeanor, fairness, and how he treated everyone with respect. Our interactions during his grocery deliveries quickly turned into a deeper connection, and I happily accepted his proposal. Landon, too, grew fond of him, and I trusted him completely to care for my son. We're taking our time with marriage preparations, enjoying this new phase of our relationship. Recently, Landon started calling him manager or dad, which filled my heart with happiness. Watching Landon sleep peacefully, I made a promise to myself not to let this happiness slip away again. Mother-in-law, please don't take money from my wallet. My mother-in-law, who couldn't resist stealing, was trying to take money from my wallet again. When I told her to stop, she got angry. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. Then she kicked me out of the house. She didn't realize she was making a big mistake. My name is Alina, and I'm 27 years old. I met Mike through a friend's introduction, and today we happily got married. When I was young, I lost my dad, and my mom raised me by herself. I respect and love her very much. However, when I first met my future mother-in-law, she said, "You look unlucky. That's why you lost your husband early." My mom and I were shocked by her rude comment about my late father. Both my father-in-law and Mike scolded her, but she defended herself, saying she was just being honest. My mom was worried about my marriage, but since my father-in-law and Mike were supportive, she eventually agreed to it. During the wedding, I was worried about what my mother-in-law might do. Thankfully, everything went smoothly. Just when I was starting to relax, there was a knock on the door of the dressing room. "Alina, it's your mom and Robert. Can we come in?" "Yes, please come in." It was my mom and her boyfriend Robert. They both shared their heartfelt congratulations and sat down. "That was a wonderful ceremony. Congratulations, Alina. You looked absolutely stunning." Robert was so moved that he cried the whole time. Well, seeing Robert's tear-streaked face, both my mom and I burst into laughter. In that cheerful atmosphere, Mike knocked and entered. "Alina, great job today. Mom, Robert, thank you for being here." "Good job, Mike. Where are your parents?" "My mom got tired and wanted to leave early, so I let her go." "I'm sorry." "It's fine. More importantly, keep your promise to me, okay?" "Of course." The agreement between my mom and Mike was that if my mother-in-law did anything to me while we were living together, Mike would always support and defend me. Because of my mother-in-law's insistence, I had to live with her after getting married. Initially, the plan was for Mike and me to live together, just the two of us. But my mother-in-law threw a fit, saying we couldn't get married unless we lived with her. Seeing my distress, my mom made this promise with Mike. Even my father-in-law said, "If something's up, let me know." Mike also told me that if living with his mom became truly unbearable, we could consider living separately. "Alina, if my mother does something, tell me right away, okay? Even if it seems small." "All right, I understand. Thanks. And I'm still working, so I'm not home that much. I think it'll be okay." "You're being naive, Alina. Well, this is something you'll only understand once you experience it. Take care of my daughter, Mike." "Yes, ma'am." I soon learned that my mom was right. After returning from our honeymoon and living in Mike's family home, I immediately saw my mother-in-law's true colors. "This food looks terrible. Redo it." Without even tasting the meal I had just prepared, my mother-in-law dumped it straight into the trash. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Mike immediately scolded her, but she retorted, "I can't let you two eat such terrible-looking food." "I threw it out for your sake and yet? Never mind." Then she stormed off to her room. Apologizing, Mike and his dad decided to take us out for dinner. When my mother-in-law heard this, she threw a tantrum about not being invited, but Mike and his father just ignored her. This made her even angrier, and she started harassing me more. Mike's family runs a small workshop, and Mike is busy preparing to take over. He studies hard, attends meetings with his father, and networks a lot. I have my job during the weekdays and am hardly home, but the weekends were a nightmare. My mother-in-law mostly stays home, does no housework, and either lounges around watching TV or goes out. Mike tries to help out when he can, and after the food incident, my father-in-law told me I can manage on my own. Just prepare food for Mike. When my mother-in-law found out about this, she said, "As a daughter-in-law, it's only natural that you should prepare food for the whole family." But my father-in-law dismissed her. Adding to the mix, my mother-in-law has very old-fashioned views. "Alina, when are you going to quit your job? When are you having kids? A woman can achieve anything with ability and charm, you know. Don't you understand? Oh, maybe you lack those, so you're still working." From her comments, it's clear my mother-in-law doesn't work and is a housewife. But according to Mike, she struggles with household chores. She's technically listed as an employee at my father-in-law's company, but she doesn't actively work. Instead, she receives a salary as pocket money from my father-in-law. However, whenever she likes something, she buys it right away, so my father-in-law handles the finances. Mike never lends her money, so when she's short on cash, she asks me, "Alina, can you lend me some money?" I'm sorry, but Mike told me not to lend you any money. After enduring her mistreatment, I couldn't understand why she expected me to lend her money willingly. Even after I refused, she persisted. "I'll make sure Mike and your dad don't find out, okay?" "I can't, sorry." "Please, Alina." "I'm sorry." My mother-in-law tried to smile and pleaded with me, but when I continued to refuse, she erupted in her usual temper tantrum. "Why are you being so difficult? You're really stingy for not helping me, even though I'm asking nicely. I can't believe it. That's why I treat you badly." Does she even realize she's the one being mean? It's surprising that someone as kind-hearted as Mike could have a mother with such a personality. Just when I was mentally trying to escape from her drama, she stormed off somewhere, clearly irritated. When Mike came home and I told him about his mother pestering me for money, both he and my father-in-law scolded her. Instead of feeling sorry, my MIL glared at me and accused, "You tattled." She then sneakily tried to rummage through my purse and take cash from my wallet. While I was out of the room, we made eye contact as I walked back in. "MIL, don't you dare take money from my wallet. I can't believe this." I warned her, but she snapped back at me. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. It's like stealing from someone else's wallet. How dare you speak up to me? Unbelievable. If you're going to be like this, just leave this house. I had reached my limit with my selfish NIL. Honestly, getting away from her unreasonable behavior would be a relief. I told her, fine, and started packing my things. She watched me with a smug grin, seemingly satisfied. Thanks for everything. It had only been 3 months since I moved in with my in-laws, but I vowed never to live with my NIL again and went back home in anger. I was so upset that I forgot to tell Mike. However, when he returned home, he found out from his father about what had happened with his mother. Where's Alina? Hey, where did Alina go? When Mike and his father returned home from work and noticed I was gone, they asked my MIL about it. She proudly said, "Oh, I just kicked that useless daughter-in-law out." She laughed loudly, but both Mike and his father looked worried and uneasy. Seeing their serious reaction, she continued obliviously. This is what I've been saying. I warn you not to marry a woman from a single-parent family. She's always disobedient and challenges me. All she had to do was agree with whatever I said. What have you done? My father-in-law shouted, more agitated than I had ever seen him. My NIL looked shocked, clearly not expecting such a reaction. Father-in-law collapsed to his knees, looking devastated, muttering, "It's over, my life is over." What's wrong? My MIL seemed bewildered, struggling to grasp what was happening. You've done something unthinkable. Why did you kick her out? Father-in-law's voice trembled with emotion. Elena is the stepdaughter of the CEO of the company we do business with. What? It finally dawned on my MIL what she had done. Her face went pale for a moment, but she quickly composed herself, insisting she hadn't done anything wrong. Mike, call Alina right now. I did. She's at Robert's place now. This is serious. Let's go immediately. I got a call on my cell from Mike, telling me that his father-in-law was possibly putting his mother-in-law into the car and heading our way. From the background noise, I could hear my MIL shouting frantically and my father-in-law yelling, "Robert, you came to the wedding with my mother as her new husband." Even though he's technically my stepfather, it turns out Robert is actually the boss of my father-in-law's business client. My mother had always said she wouldn't remarry until after I got married, so she hadn't met our families until the wedding and wasn't seated in the family section at the ceremony. So my mother-in-law doesn't know about this. My father-in-law only recently found out that Robert was my mother's new husband. Robert married my mother after I got married, but I've known Robert for nearly 20 years. After my father passed away, my mother raised me on her own. No matter how tough things got, she never complained and was always smiling, brightening up everyone around her. Robert, smitten by her, proposed to her, but she apparently told him she wouldn't marry anyone until after I was married. I don't want to burden Elena anymore, getting a new dad, changing her last name, moving. I can't make her go through all of that just because of adult circumstances. I'm so sorry. I'll wait. Huh? I'll wait until Alina grows up, becomes independent, and someday gets married and is happy. Then it'll be my turn to make you happy. Robert, can I stay and watch over Elena with you until then? By then, won't we be pretty old? It doesn't matter. If we're talking age, I'll be even older. Robert laughed heartily, my mother with tears in her eyes, thanking him. Robert respected my mother's wishes, always promising to wait. They never officially married until I did, but I knew they deeply loved each other, even after losing my father. Sometimes I felt like if my mother married Robert, she would be taken away from me. There were times I wasn't kind to Robert, but he always treated me lovingly, often taking us out or going on trips. He even tried to pay for my college tuition. My mother declined, saying it was a matter of principle, but that's the kind of relationship we had with Robert. Of course, my childhood home now belonged to Robert, so as my MIL suggested, we returned there. When we filled Robert in on everything that happened with my in-laws and about my MIL, he was furious. Knowing the business relationship with my father-in-law's company, he was boiling with anger when the doorbell rang. My mother checked the monitor and saw my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Mike outside. She asked Robert if they could come in, and he agreed, unlocking the door to welcome them. As soon as they entered and saw the tense atmosphere, both my father-in-law and Mike knelt down. We're deeply sorry. My wife was very rude to Alina. It seems she forced Elena to leave. My father-in-law apologized. I'm sorry too. If Alina is uncomfortable, we can stop living together, Mike added. While they were apologizing, my MIL stood defiantly with her arms crossed. What are you talking about? Elena is the one at fault here, right? I did nothing wrong. Besides, who will do the housework now that Elena is gone? I was stunned, unable to close my open mouth. Looking at my indifferent NIL, I knew she lacked common sense, but I never expected her behavior to escalate like this. It was my father-in-law who finally broke the silence. I knew you were sheltered and naive, but I never imagined you'd go this far, he said with resignation. We'll start the divorce proceedings as soon as tomorrow. I'm utterly disappointed in you. What are you talking about? Why should I be the one to get a divorce? If anyone should, it should be Elena and Mike, since she left on her own. My MIL's earlier arrogance vanished when faced with the prospect of divorce from her husband. Mike joined in the confrontation. Why should I divorce Elena? I love her. I have no intention of divorcing her. We only agreed to live with you because you begged us, crying, and yet you treat Elena like a maid. Stop talking nonsense. My father-in-law nodded in agreement and said, a mix of exasperation and anger evident in his voice, your father asked me to take care of you, so I became your husband and took care of you. But no matter how many times I warn you, you never listen and you never show any remorse. At this age, you're beyond my control. My mother-in-law clung to my father-in-law, who appeared distant, perhaps reflecting on the challenges he had faced until now. What about the company? It belonged to my father. Your father passed the company to me when he passed away. Even if I retire, Mike is here. You've only been a figurehead at the company and haven't done any real work. Do you think you can suddenly take over? I won't let the employees end up on the streets because of you. My MIL appeared to be searching for a way out as she faced criticism from her husband and Mike. Just to clarify, my MIL is a true daddy's girl, raised in luxury. She's never held a job, always living as a pampered princess. Without her husband's support, she wouldn't be able to manage household chores, let alone a job. My MIL tried to hold on to my father-in-law, but his decision seemed firm. Elena, say something. Out of desperation, she turned to me for support. I also believe divorce is the right decision. Someone who tries to steal money from another's wallet and then reacts aggressively when confronted, who knows what she might do next? What are you talking about? To those who might not know the real reason I left, I explained that it was because my MIL had attempted to steal money. Their faces turned pale. I can't believe this. This is unbelievable. Stop exaggerating. I was just borrowing a little, MIL retorted unapologetically. Both my mother and Robert countered firmly, in most places that's called theft, which is a serious crime. I thought you were unreasonable, but I cannot allow my daughter to return to a place where someone like you lives. I agree. Elena may not be my biological daughter, but she is precious to me. How can I send back such a beloved daughter to someone who mistreats her? Robert added. I have no response to that. We are truly sorry. Throughout this conversation, both my father-in-law and Mike have been apologizing repeatedly, but MIL hasn't apologized once. You're the reason for all this, aren't you? How can you behave like this? Despite their apologies, MIL showed no remorse. Well, that's because, look, I've encountered a few people like you in my time, so I can pretty much guess. If I were you, I'd consider a divorce. Don't make decisions for me. You're the one being unreasonable here. Enough is enough. I'm telling you I will go to court if necessary, but I'm divorcing you. That's final. No, please. My father-in-law had indeed prepared divorce papers with his part filled out. He was ready to take legal action if MIL resisted. Finally grasping the seriousness of the situation, MIL reluctantly signed the divorce papers and relinquished half of the assets. My father-in-law seemed strangely relieved. Mike kept his promise to my mom and severed ties with MIL. Even my father-in-law distanced himself from her. After the divorce, MIL couldn't curb her shopping habits and quickly spent through her share of the assets. Despite trying to reach out to them multiple times, both were steadfast in blocking her out completely. Recently, I happened to see someone who resembled MIL. She had aged considerably, losing her once proud and arrogant demeanor, looking frail and fragile. Her whole presence had changed. Due to her behavior, she had always been kept at a distance. Now, after everything that happened, negative rumors about her were spreading like wildfire. It seemed no one was willing to help her anymore. It's said that she's finally feeling remorse for her actions. As they say, actions have consequences. A few days later, my father-in-law and Mike visited Robert with a box of chocolates to apologize. When I explained that MIL had disappeared, Robert and my mother cautioned them not to let it happen again. Afterward, I returned to Mike's family home. Since MIL left, my stress levels have dropped significantly. Not just me, but both my father-in-law and Mike also seemed to be much happier. Soon after, I found out I was pregnant, and the whole family was overjoyed. We are eagerly awaiting the arrival of our new family member. My mother-in-law threw out my things because she didn't want a daughter-in-law who planned to give birth at her parents' house. She dragged me out of the house while I was still in my pajamas, not even letting me put on my shoes. All I had was my phone, so I called my mom, who luckily was nearby. I waited for her at a local diner. When my mom and sister heard what happened, they were furious. They made a call that marked the start of trouble for my mother-in-law and husband. My name is Katie, and I'm 28 years old. I married Sam, who is 30 a year ago. His father runs a big company, and Sam is being groomed to be the next CEO. Right now, he's training at one of their smaller companies. I met Sam at work, but I didn't know about his family's business until shortly before we got married. He hadn't told me that he was going to be the next CEO until then. I was completely surprised when Sam told me he was going to be the CEO of the main company. At first, I couldn't believe it because he seemed so capable and well-liked. But after he explained, it all made sense, and suddenly I was the wife of a future CEO. After we got married, Sam moved to the main company's office, while I continued working at my job. My father-in-law told me, "I've heard you're a young leader at your workplace. Keep up the good work," Sam said. However, my mother-in-law had a different view. "Why would a wife neglect her home to work?" she asked, strongly opposed to me having a job. I thought there wouldn't be any issues since we weren't living together, but I was mistaken. Sam's parents wanted us to live with them. It started when my father-in-law said, "I'm very busy. It would be nice to have someone take care of us." Sam also agreed with the idea of living together. "I'm concerned about Mom too. I've grown up in this house, and moving now would be inconvenient," he explained. I had almost no chance to oppose living together. When they asked my opinion, my mother-in-law said, "Since everyone seems to think it's a good idea, Katie, do you have any objections?" At that point, I had no choice but to agree to live with my in-laws. Unexpectedly, once we moved in together, my mother-in-law, who had opposed my job, started making life difficult for me, pushing me to quit. She dumped all the household chores on me, even though I was working. If she wasn't satisfied with how I did things, she'd make me redo them. At first, she complained about small things like a speck of dust or a stray hair. I tried to learn from her feedback and clean those spots better. Then she started checking unusual places like behind the TV or between dressers for dust, places that aren't typically cleaned regularly. I thought, these aren't part of normal cleaning routines. So I finally spoke up. "I can't clean these spots every day. I work just like Sam does. I'll do a thorough cleaning on weekends, so there's no need to redo everything today, right?" My mother-in-law got angry and snapped back, "How dare you talk back to me like that? Times have changed. It's unheard of for a daughter-in-law to be so bold." In her anger, she called for Sam. "Sam," Katie yelled at me. I had gently pointed out areas she missed while cleaning, thinking it was for her benefit. But she portrayed herself as the victim, shedding fake tears to Sam. I hoped Sam would understand and support me. "Mom, Katie is working too. Maybe you could go easy on her," I thought. But reality was different. "Why did you upset Mom like that? She was only trying to help. Why are you getting upset?" Sam scolded me. In the end, Sam sided with his mother. That's when I realized the only person I could rely on in that house was my father-in-law. But he was rarely around due to his busy schedule. I had to fend for myself. That's how it went. After that, I stopped confronting my mother-in-law. It didn't matter what I said. She would always tell Sam, and I would end up feeling down. It seemed better just to quietly listen to her. That's the approach I started to take, knowing Sam wouldn't support me. It was the only way to have some peace in that house. I lived like this for a year, but then I started feeling unwell and decided to see a doctor. It turned out I wasn't just sick, I was pregnant. I wondered how my in-laws would react to the news. With a glimmer of hope, I first told my husband. "You know how I've been feeling off lately. I went to the doctor, and guess what? I'm pregnant," I said. "Wow, that's great. So I'm going to be a dad, huh? Can't wait. Do we know the gender yet?" Sam exclaimed. "Not yet. Does it matter to you?" I asked. "Of course it does. It has to be a boy," Sam replied. As I suspected, Sam was his parents' only child. I had a feeling that having a boy might be important for someone to take over the family business. What if it turns out to be a girl? I started to worry about how the baby's gender might be received. "Don't worry, I'm sure it's a boy," Sam reassured me. But I wasn't so confident. We decided to tell his parents only after finding out the gender. Eventually, we learned it was a girl. I was thrilled, though I had no intention of discriminating based on gender. Sam, however, reacted differently. "What? A girl? Are you sure? Get it checked again," he said. Seeing Sam's disappointment made me anxious about how my mother-in-law would react. I dreaded telling her. Despite Sam's initial reaction, we couldn't avoid sharing the news with our in-laws. Eventually, I persuaded Sam to break the news to his parents. "Well, I'm pregnant," he announced. "That's wonderful, Katie. We're finally going to have our first grandchild," my father-in-law exclaimed happily. My mother-in-law, however, asked right away, "So, what's the gender?" With hesitation, I replied, "It's a girl." "A girl, huh? I hope she's as lovely as you, Katie," my father-in-law responded warmly, seemingly unconcerned about the gender. But my mother-in-law couldn't hide her disappointment. "A girl? Not a boy? It has to be a boy for it to make sense for Sam," she muttered. I was shocked to hear her say that, but my father-in-law quickly intervened. "Honey, why would you say that? Whether it's a boy or a girl, they're still our grandchild. Can't you just be happy? After my father-in-law scolded her, my mother-in-law seemed a bit down, but I knew it wouldn't last long. Sure enough, as soon as he left for work, she confronted me. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off on the housework. You're not planning to quit your job, are you? If not, keep up with your chores. Pregnancy isn't an illness, you know. Hearing pregnancy isn't an illness from another woman, especially one who had given birth herself, surprised me. It made me question if staying here was the right choice for having my child. My family's home is about a 3-hour train ride away. My dad passed away early and now my mom and older sister live there together. Maybe if I explained everything to them, they might let me stay with them. I started to feel that giving birth at my in-laws' place might not be the safest option and remembered my family's home could be a better choice. I decided to contact my mom right away. "Mom, it's me, Katie. What's up?" "It's rare for you to call. I'm pregnant and I was wondering if I could come home to give birth." "You're pregnant? You should have told us earlier. Congratulations. Come home for the delivery, of course, that's fine. But have you gotten permission from your in-laws?" "Well, not yet. If you discuss it properly and they agree, I don't mind at all." Mom advised me to discuss it with my in-laws. For the safety of my baby, I decided to go home for the delivery. When I talked to my husband about it, he casually said, "Going home for the birth? Oh, I guess that's fine. My mom's here too, so things should be okay around the house." He agreed quickly. Anticipating possible opposition from my mother-in-law, I decided to talk to my father-in-law. After careful consideration, I thought it would be better for everyone if I went home for the delivery. "Would that be all right?" I asked. Initially, he looked surprised, but then said, "If that's what you want, Katie, then it's probably best. I won't oppose. Could you possibly talk to my mother-in-law on my behalf?" I asked. "Well, I'll tell her," he replied, seemingly agreeing to my request. With his support, I got permission to go home for the delivery without any problems. On the day I was supposed to leave, I woke up to find that my packed luggage was missing. Unfortunately, both my husband and father-in-law had already left for work. "Do you know where my luggage is?" I hesitated to ask my mother-in-law, but I had no other option. "Oh, that luggage. I got rid of it all. I don't need a daughter-in-law who causes so much trouble. Don't ever come back," she shouted at me as she pushed me out the front door. I hadn't even had time to put on my shoes. All I had was my smartphone. I was practically in my pajamas, and with a loud click, the front door locked behind me. This meant my mother-in-law was serious. She really wanted me out, that much was clear. I felt like if I stayed there, that door would never open for me again. With that thought, I started walking. But it was the peak of summer, and walking barefoot outside was unbearable, so I sought refuge in a nearby diner. Using my phone, the only possession I had, I called my mom. She was furious and promised to be there within an hour. Luckily, she wasn't far away. I spent that hour at the diner, waiting anxiously. When my mom arrived, she wasted no time and drove me straight back to our family home. My sister was already there waiting for us. I poured out everything about my mother-in-law's actions and my husband's indifference. After hearing my story, my mom and sister exchanged some words quietly, leaving me unsure of what they were discussing. The next morning, being at my family home was a breath of fresh air. I was asked to fetch the newspaper, and when I opened the door, I found my mother-in-law and husband kneeling outside. "Katie, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. Please don't sever ties with my husband's company," my mother-in-law pleaded. "Katie, I'm sorry too. Please, can we continue doing business with my dad's company?" my husband added. Confused, I had no idea what they were talking about. Then suddenly, my mom and sister appeared from behind. "What on earth are you two doing causing a scene this early?" My mom's voice was stern. "What does resuming business mean?" To avoid any further disturbance, my mom invited them inside our home. Once settled, my husband started explaining. "Would you please consider doing business again with my dad's company? My mom and sister manage the company my dad left behind." Curious, I asked my mom, "What does it mean that they're doing business with my father-in-law's company?" "Yes, they work with one of their subsidiary companies," my mom replied. "Exactly. It's a major company within their group, second only to the main office, and their top client is Katie's mom's company," my husband added. I had no idea. Apparently my husband was misinformed. This was news to me too. LOL. Come to think of it, I remember my mother and father-in-law mentioning something about always being indebted to each other when they first met. I recalled. I cannot continue doing business with a family that would send my daughter out in such a state with just her phone. "I'm stopping our business dealings," my mom declared firmly. My mother-in-law looked visibly shaken and pleaded, "Please, I beg you. I'll do anything. Could you reconsider stopping the dealings with my husband's company?" At that moment, my sister chimed in with a smirk. "You said you'd do anything, right? So you'll agree to Katie's divorce and naturally you'll pay alimony and child support, right? I silently thought, bringing up my divorce now, well played. Actually, before contacting my mom yesterday, I had spoken to my husband. His response was, "It's what you deserve, isn't it?" I found myself agreeing with my mom's decision. I no longer had any remaining affection for him. I would have brought up divorce anyway if my sister hadn't. But thanks to her timing, the conversation seemed to be turning in our favor. My mother-in-law then asked reluctantly, "Yes, even if it means agreeing to a divorce, will you resume business with my husband's company?" With a confident smirk, my mom took out her phone and began speaking into it. It seems this lady here agrees to my daughter's divorce. From the speaker, my father-in-law's voice echoed, "Got it. Hey, is Jenna there? Jenna, I'm divorcing you, and Sam, you're fired." Those were the conditions set for resuming business. Additionally, my mom declared, "I cannot forgive the two of you for how you treated Katie. You both deserve to be punished." As a result of my father-in-law's decision, my mother-in-law lost her husband, and my husband lost his job, income, and family support. The story continued with a challenging divorce between my in-laws, which eventually went through, reportedly settled by a top-notch lawyer from my father-in-law's side. During the divorce proceedings, assets were divided, and my mother-in-law ended up paying a significant sum in compensation to my husband and me. I, too, went through with the divorce. Living harmoniously with a husband who only followed his mother's wishes was no longer an option for me. I received compensation for the pain caused by my mother-in-law and husband, along with child support for our unborn child. They paid a significant amount from their savings but had to take on debt. With my father-in-law and mom's influence, my husband struggled to find a new job and eventually had to switch careers. He quickly moved into customer service but underestimated the role and faced numerous complaints, leading to his swift termination. Now he's living with his mom and barely scraping by with daily wage jobs. My mother-in-law and husband, once accustomed to a lavish lifestyle thanks to my father-in-law, now reside in a small one-bedroom apartment. Their once close relationship has soured, and they argue frequently. As for my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband, I wonder if there's any hope or joy left in their lives. Meanwhile, I safely gave birth at home to a healthy baby girl. With the support of my mom and sister, I plan to focus on raising her. Once things settle down, I'm thinking of working at my mom's company. I did inform my ex-husband about our daughter's birth, but there hasn't been any follow-up from him. It seems he doesn't care much. All I expect from him is to ensure he pays child support. I have no intention of letting him see our daughter for the rest of her life. From now on, my focus is moving forward and living a fulfilling life with my daughter.